So hi, everybody. This is HENNESYS from ArmHug. Welcome to the YouTube channel. If you haven't already, we've got so many people that we interview on here who are subject matter experts. Today we have Dr. Viola Pierce. She is known as Dr. V. She has been a nurse for over 30 years. Now she's a nursepreneur. She's got so much experience in this space, and I just want to go ahead and get started. So Dr. V, how did you start? How did this all start? Right? You became a nurse and then now you became a nursepreneur, that transition.
So I first, I want to give honor to my mom. She just passed away a couple of weeks ago. And she was the one who was the catalyst for me to even becoming a nurse. I wanted to become an engineer. She said, She said, we don't have enough money for you to go to engineering school. She said, but you can go to community college. And I was like, well, what am I going to study? She was like, nurse. And I was like, well, okay, we can do that. So I went and I became a nurse. And so that's my story about how I entered the industry. And so once I got into the industry, for many, many years, I worked in the emergency department and I absolutely loved it, right? Because it was the excitement, the always going after, taking care of patients that were traumas, patients that come in with, acute MIs, those things. And it was just a really, really good vibe. But then I started to see patients that were coming in that weren't necessarily emergencies, but there were so many social determinants of health that were going on. And I said, well, we've got to figure this out because we can't fix in 10 days what, has happened in 10 years. If you've eaten fatback every week for 10 years, we're probably not going to be able to, cure that. So we need to, be very proactive about taking care of the patients. But as I moved up in the chain, as I went back and got all these degrees, because of the fact that in nursing, they teach you to go back to school and get all these degrees. And so I went back to school to get all these degrees, didn't really learn a whole lot more than what I already knew with all these degrees, which was upsetting. But I was like, well, okay, now I'll be able to go to the corporate suite and I'll be able to make a sustainable change. But once I found out, once I went back, up to the corporate suite, I found that it was not necessarily their goal to make the change, right? I just took a peek behind the curtain. And so when I took a peek behind the curtain, what I found out was that, healthcare organizations and people who sell drugs, all the drug companies, if they're just think about it, right? So if you're well, then they don't make as much money. They don't capitalize off that. And so when I figured out that my goals and my objectives did not align with the organization, I knew that it was time for me to go. And so I made my way of figuring out how to, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And the reality is that we have been doing the same thing in healthcare for years, and we're sicker, we're a much sicker population. And so I just wanted to find a different way of supporting other nurses within this field so that we could, work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning our own time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so do you see this as, when you say working with other nurses, are you consulting? Are you a coach, mentor? Just trying to find how to describe what your role is now.
So so I'm a business coach. And so I teach them how to develop their own business so that they are influencing. So our goal is to have a footprint so that we're able to influence nurses all over the world. And, our goal by 2032 is to have 100,000 nurses that we have affected, that we have given the ability to be able to start their own business. To tell the story about she was a senator and she was in Washington State. And she came out and she was talking about, apparently they have something in that state where the government is involved in the breaks that the nurses get. And they were talking about the lady said that, well, I think that she said something to the effect of the nurses playing cards on their breaks. And I says, nurses know that whenever we go on breaks, usually we have our phone on us. We don't have time to take breaks. We have to shove down our food. We don't have, it's like a whole thing. And so when she said that, I was quite upset about it. And then, so I shared the post and shared how upset I was about it. Well, the next morning when I woke up, because I have a bunch of nurses on my timeline, it was lit up. And I was like, oh, they mad too. And so it ended up that she got a whole lot of backlash, and she had to come back and she had to apologize. And I felt sorry for her. But what I realized in that moment is that us as nurses, we can definitely move the needle in healthcare. We can definitely make some sustainable change in healthcare, but we can't do it under the auspices at times. I mean, sometimes we can under the auspices of being in an organization, but sometimes we just can't. And when your goals and objectives is not aligned with the organization in which you're at, you're overwhelmed, you're burnt out, you're not able to move forward, then you have to choose something differently. So
Yeah. And like you're saying, like, I don't even think it's just nurses, it's everybody that's working the same, like under one roof, and it's almost like a chain reaction. Like I think an MA can have a big influence too, or have learned a lot through the office that probably somebody else didn't know. Um, some phlebotomists. I'm trying to think, like there's so many healthcare professionals, even as small as the person who's always in the office, but they don't have like a medical background, but
mhm.
they've seen so much, or they've had to deal a lot with the patient's customer service, and like maybe they're upset about something. It's like, who's going to deal with that? That's the person who runs the office, right?
Right. And I deal with all healthcare professionals. Of course, my target market is nurses,
Mhm.
but the goal is for all of us to make such a sustainable difference. Of course, marketing, you got to go out the one target market, like, you have to
Mhm.
specialize, right? But yes, it is definitely a whole vibe and a whole thing at the end of the day.
And then you mentioned a little bit about like nurses posting. So there's a lot of talk like about what things we should be posting about. I mean, if we don't, then people don't know, right? Do you think it's okay to be posting about some of this stuff? As long as like maybe we don't talk directly about what patient name it was or what experience we've had. What's the best way of reporting this, you think?
So I think so there's a couple of things. So when you are, and this is one of the things that I struggled with whenever I was in, working for someone else. I struggled with the fact that my voice wasn't heard, right? And I didn't feel like I could say anything negative about any organization because of the fact that I would, be ostracized, those types of things. But now I'm pretty clear and free to say whatever I would like. Now, as far as posting about patients, you have to be very vague when you're posting about patients. You can't have any patient identifiers, of course, and understanding that those patients, you want to give information. Like I've told stories, but you would never know. Like you can never tie that story back to a particular patient, right? And so you have to be vague in how you do whatever you do. Like I've told a story before about two children coming into the emergency department, and they were a victim of gunshot wounds, right? And so I told the story, but you wouldn't, I mean, there's many children that come into the emergency department that are victims of gunshot wounds, unfortunately, but you would never be able to tie it back to a particular patient.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And then do you like the idea of Facebook groups? There's a lot of, I guess, a lot of talk about taking advice from other business owners. Maybe it might not be as great as, or I should say, it has not been validated. So a little bit about, if you can talk a little bit about how your business differs from getting advice on Facebook.
Okay. So now, are you talking about medical advice or you're talking about coaching business advice?
Coaching.
coaching. So mine is very different in that I don't give advice. I mean, I give some overall objectives, but they're very specific tactical ways in which you can make money and the way that you can impact your communities. I mean, that's a part of my coaching program. So I don't release that online because it's too much, right? It's too much to get into. But once you're in the coaching program, I handhold you through the process. And so that's one of the things that's very unique about my program is, number one, we operate in excellence. Number two, I am a nurse, and so I understand where you can make money within make money and make an impact. And it has to be something that you are passionate about. Okay. Because when I think of the reason that I wake up every single solitary morning and the reason why I do what I do is because all I think of is the nurses in the emergency department. And I think of them being there and not having another option and them going to work every single solitary day and them having to, because there's some nurses that are out there and they love it and they want to do it and they're fresh and they're new and that's great and wonderful. But for the nurse that goes to the bedside, that has all these outside things that are going on, and they are tired of the way that things are going because they see the writing on the wall. Those are the nurses that I'm targeting, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're tired, you're burned out, you will not be there for the patient. And I think that that's where hospitals have gotten it wrong. Because hospitals, what they do is they focus on the patient. Okay, these patient satisfaction scores. Well, what you don't understand is that the nurses are the conduit between the organization and the patient. And, and the nurses, healthcare professionals, whoever you are, right? You're the conduit. The staff is the conduit between the hospital and the healthcare organization. And if you don't treat them right, I mean, there's no way in the world that the CEO can come down and service every patient, but you can service every healthcare professional that's in the organization.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think even the way you're talking about it, it's already making me think a little bit about like, why do you think it's important for entrepreneurs to have coaches?
Oh, the reason why I think it's important for entrepreneurs to have coaches is because you have someone that is there. Entrepreneurship is not easy. It is not easy by no stretch of the imagination. And so the deal is that you have someone there it's sort of like whenever you're in the hospital, right? You have someone there that you can depend upon. You have someone there. I will always have a coach. I will always invest in my professional and personal development. That is the way in which I got to be where I am today. It's because of my coaches. It's not because there are times like just yesterday, which we're on Vox, so I Voxed my coach and I said, I asked him a question. He immediately came back with the answer. So I'm not walking out on that ledge. I walk out on that ledge with confidence because I know that you've done it before. You've walked this walk before. All I need to do is ask you how to do that same thing. And so my clients do the same thing. As a matter of fact, I had 3 calls with clients yesterday. And when I had those 3 calls, we like clarity. It just brings clarity to you. And with clarity, you can move forth, knowing that what you're doing is working, knowing that what you're doing is going to move the needle. Because it's important, I tell people this all the time. It's important that you have someone who has walked that walk. You have someone who has gone that same way. Because if you don't have someone who has gone that same way, then how can they tell you how to do it? So I do coaches and consultants, right? But I don't teach you how to open up a med spa. I don't teach you how to open up a home health agency because I hadn't done it before. But I have a lot of colleagues. I have a whole network of people that I can refer you to. But coaching and consulting is what I do, and I do it best.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. This is something I've been learning to the past few months, and I think coaches and mentors are amazing. I don't know where I would be without them. And then I also wanted that message that you just said to be heard, because I know a lot of people who are still working on their own and they're still trying to do it on their own. So it's like, what advice do you have for people who are stuck and think they have to still do everything by themselves? Like, I don't know why we think sometimes that we need to do this like this. I know people who still are not paying themselves enough, but they're still trying to do all of the work. It's almost like they can't let go of this control they're going to therapy, excuse me, to try to understand a little bit about some trauma that they have of like whether it's letting go of this control or getting to know themselves a little bit better, relieving trust.
So
So,
what I have to, go ahead.
oh no, yeah, go for it.
So one of the things that I have to say is that we were at a conference this weekend, and I have to give it to Myron Golden, because this is one of the things that he says all the time. Okay, so he asked the crowd. He said, "Is do you think that time is money?" And the crowd said, "Yes, time is money." Right? He said, "I have to disagree with you. Time is infinitely more valuable than money." And he said, and so, he said, and I'll explain to you why. He said, if I gave you $25 million today, would you want it? Of course, everybody said yes, right? But if I gave you $25 million and I said that I would lend your life had to end today, would you still take the money? No, you wouldn't. At least most people wouldn't.
Right.
Now, if you had to, inversely, if you had $25 million yourself and you had a terminal illness, and the illness, okay, was the cure to the illness was worth $25 million, would you give away that $25 million to cure that illness? Yes, you would, right? And so the deal is that you have that. You have time. You can make the money if you have the time. But what people don't understand is that they can shorten their time in making the money, because you can make money. You can be paid $25,000 over 40 years and make $1 million, right? But why would you want to do that? That's a lot of time, right? You shorten the time by having coaches and mentors who are there, who can teach you the basics. I don't have to go out on any ledge. I don't have to do anything by myself. I have a whole network of people who can tell me how to do that, because I'm a firm believer that if you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with the most, and if you're the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room, period. And so I am very intentional about hanging out with people who are much smarter than I am.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then it's like, yeah, I mean, exactly right. If you don't, I mean, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? You're not going to learn anything new.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you move the needle, and you grow. You grow exponentially. But we want to get stuck. We want to have control. Like I've got this young person that is she has a business, right? And it is a service-based business. And she is in the business all the time. The goal is for you to at first be the entrepreneur, where you are just trading another job for that job, okay? Because you want to understand your job as well as you can. But then the goal is for you to move into the CEO position. Because, if you really think about it, not Jeff Bezos, but Bill Gates, he didn't build a computer, right? He's the thinker. All right. He may have built one, right? He's the thinker behind his company, right? And CEOs think so that they can build a company that is effective for, makes a large impact. Your gift will make room for you, number one. Your gift will impact so many people, but you've got to let your gift go beyond you. If you do not, then it will not affect the people that it needs to affect.
Right, right. And then what advice do you have for people who've had a bad experience? Like, there are people out there, unfortunately, who are scamming and lying to people and telling them that they're going to help them build a multi-billion or million-dollar business. And, these people have these expectations, like, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow. And, what kind of things should we look out for when we're picking a coach?
So I think that you should look for social proof. Okay. So you should look for social proof. If they don't have any proof that they have transformed someone's life, then don't go with them. You need to look them up. You need to research them. If you look up my name, you will find me, right? And you will find out that even on my website I have testimonials, right, of other clients that have come in. Look for the social proof. Look for how they show up in social media. Okay. Look for how they show up for you. Okay. I'm very specific in how me and my team, one of the things that I harp on all the time is us showing up in excellence. Number one, us showing up in excellence. Number two, us showing up in excellence and being extremely valuable to the people that we serve, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm late for your call, then we, that's not showing up in excellence.
Mhm.
And that's an indicator, that's, a possible indicator that you are, of course things happen, right? But that's a possible indicator that you are not, doing what you need to do. And so, and I mean, have I had bad coaches before? Absolutely. Okay. But do I harp on that? Absolutely not. Because what has happened is I fail when I stop. Okay. And at the end of the day, I've got to show up for me no matter what. And they can do whatever they want to do. They can act however they want to act. I mean, one coach, I had to block her number, right? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
true.
I just did whatever I had to do in order to make sure that I'm moving the needle forward, because nobody will stop this. VP Nursing will be a global company. It's a nationwide company at this point, but it will be a global company at some point.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that it's like you have to go through the bad ones to
Mhm.
understand like what's really good or what kind of information do you need. And I'm curious, like in your experience, do you think that a lot of the clients you've had are going to be coached for life kind of thing? Is that something that like is there lifestyle coaching involved in this or is this just business coaching?
No, well, so of course, my target market is nurses,
Mhm.
but I have had some life coaches that have come through.
Mhm.
And so, they've, as long as they have been in my program, once they started, they've, pivoted. Now there's a couple of people that have come through and they just they really burn out with their particular job. But I gave them the confidence. Not I gave them the confidence. We just talked about mindset issues and we moved the needle so that they could go into and transition into a place that was good, better for them.
Got it. And with your business coaching, do you give out like business plan templates? Do you teach that? Just trying to understand a little bit more about it because some coaches I know they try to kind of set up like what the person needs for their business, meaning like they need an EIN number, they need a name, they need this attorney to help them. Like, is it kind of like that, or is it a little different? Just to
Yeah. Yeah. So it's literally everything. Like we start you out, we give you all the basics, because what I have learned, in some people, especially whenever you go into the larger coaching programs, the one that are, they're just they have a lot of, how shall I say this? They're more expensive. So the deal is that what happens is they won't give you those basics because they think that you already have them. So
right.
I come in and I let you know exactly. I start you where you start at. And we talk about everything. I literally handhold you through that process. And so all of that. Plus it's mindset, because mindset is 80% of it. The actual practical application is 20% of it. Okay. You get your mind right, right? Then the practical application is coming. I have both mindset and practical application, right? Because if you market well, you don't have to sell, right? Marketing is the conduit and the key to you not having to sell as much as you would otherwise.
Right, right. Go out there and be a sales rep. We don't have time for that. Well, thank you so much. That was the last question. I mean, if there's anything else you want to add here, any advice for people who might be thinking about leaving that job that's stressing them out. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it more than a lot of us, but anything that you look out for, anything they should look out for, like if they're just not getting enough sleep, maybe they should stop and think a little bit about themselves. As healthcare professionals, we're always thinking about the other person.
I think one of the things that whenever you are burnt out, I think one of the things is just super important is for you to have some time to think, because what we do, we live in a very noisy world, right? And
So,
so one of the things that I have done, and I have, just before we got on, I put my phone on focus, so that I would not be disturbed. And so I leave it on focus pretty much the entire day. And so there's only certain people that can get through even with my focus on. And the reason why I do that is because of the fact that I need to have time. I can't be a part of it. Another thing is reading books. You need to read books for your professional and personal development. I read books all the time. And I just found out, okay, I just want to let you know, all right? Because I know this, all right? So, like, when you download an ebook, right?
mhm.
And then you ask Alexa, Alexa will read that ebook. So I can
Um,
be in the shower and you knew that? See,
audiobooks. Yeah.
now, I knew about Audible, right?
Right.
But like if you have an ebook that is
Mhm.
not on Audible and then you ask Alexa to read the ebook, I was like, well, who knew that? Okay. So I just found that out a couple of days ago. So I mean, you just prepare to be sick of me,
Amazing.
okay? All right, prepare to be sick of me because I'm gonna be reading. I mean, I love those little ebooks, but I'm not interested in reading. Another thing too is not reading per se. I mean, I'm interested in listening. But another thing I need to say is that the world is going to be the world is. It's going to be the way the world is. And so we cannot get caught up in everything that's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
The person that we have to change is us. When we change us, when I change who I am on the inside, when I get myself straight, then I'm unstoppable and you are too as well, right? But it is a matter of you changing who you are. And I'm gonna tell this short story. So because God will prepare you for where you are. So I'm telling this short story. So when I was in the emergency department, I was all about the metrics, right? I was all about the door to drug time, door to admission time, door to whatever time, right? And what happened was I was burning out the staff because I didn't understand. You see, my management was loving it, okay, because our scores were phenomenal, right? However, I was burning out the staff doing that as a charge nurse. And so they changed the game. They changed it to where we had peer interviews, right? And so when they started having peer interviews, I got demoted twice from 2 jobs. And I was like, and I lost all my access and all of that, right? And so then I was back down to a staff nurse. And after I was back down to that staff nurse, I said, well, okay, Viola, the common denominator is you. You see, what I could have said was the common denominator is that they don't like you, but that's not
Mhm.
it. The common denominator was me. Now, had I looked externally, those are contributing factors, right? If had I looked externally, then what would have happened was I would not be where I am because I looked internally. I started looking up leadership material. So I looked up John Maxwell leadership. And so now I'm a John Maxwell leadership speaker, coach, and trainer, right? Not that you have to be, but that's what I did. And I started reading the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And what I understood was there was the law of the lid. And so you as a company owner your company can only go as far as you are as the leader. And so I understood that I was at times a lid. And I needed to understand that I needed to move the needle forward. And I needed to understand that we're in the business of people. We're not in the business of money. We're not in the business of anything. We're in the business of people. And when we impact people's lives, when we change people's lives, then we have done the good for the world and we have opened up our gifts and we can die empty, but live full.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. I know how busy you are too. So I will definitely be in touch. And I'm going to go ahead and close our session today. So I hope you
Okay.
guys enjoyed that, Dr. B, everybody.